Robbie Mallett. I'm a PhD student at the Centre for Polar Observation and Modelling at UCL in the UK. I'm just finishing a PhD on sea ice decline. In particular, I'm interested in snow on sea ice and how that affects the way that the sea ice grows, how it affects how it behaves, and how the snow shades in ice and under ice primary producers from light. So it moderates how much energy they can get and how fast they can grow. One thing I'm really interested in is how, when you take two steps to the right on the sea ice, the snow can be quite different, and how that depth distribution of snow affects how much light gets into the ice and how much light gets through the ice into the ocean below and to those tiny algal particles that can sustain larger animals like fish through the polar winter. I'm also really interested in how we can work out how much snow is on the sea ice, both from looking at modeling products that add up all the snow that's fallen from the sky in a given year, and also from satellites. So I use radar and other types of instruments mounted on satellites that measure the height of the sea ice and the height of the snow. And from those measurements, we can try and estimate how much snow there is on the sea ice in different parts of the polar regions. I'm particularly interested in why there's more snow on Antarctic sea ice than we tend to see on Arctic sea ice, and what the effects of that are on the way the sea ice behaves, and also the way that primary producers support the ecology in the Southern Ocean compared to the Arctic Ocean. I decided to apply to the BEPSII Sea Ice School because I have quite a physical science background. So my expertise is very much in modeling thermodynamics and thinking about radar waves and how that reflects the snow cover on the sea ice. And I really wanted to talk to biologists and ecologists about how my work in terms of the snow cover can translate into potentially modeling the light availability for Arctic ecology, and also how the biogeochemical cycling happens and how that is controlled by the snow cover. So how nutrients and carbon move in and out of the sea ice, in and out of the polar oceans, and whether that is controlled by the snow properties on the sea ice. I had a really good experience with the BEPSII Sea Ice School. I actually came straight from Antarctic fieldwork, so I went on a 2-month research campaign in the Southern Ocean in Antarctica on the sea ice, and then I arrived back in Chile and flew straight to Cambridge Bay in the Arctic. So that was a pretty wild experience, moving from pole to pole to go from Southern Ocean sea ice straight onto Arctic sea ice and start talking about some research that was quite unfamiliar to me, but was really exciting because I'd just seen some really varied and interesting examples of sea ice, particularly some very high levels of biological productivity in the Southern Ocean, and I really wanted to understand what drives that, how that's going to change in future, and whether what I saw was exceptional or normal. So I suddenly had the chance after going on this research cruise to meet loads of biogeochemical specialists and talk to them about something that was totally outside of my research experience, which was great. At the BEPSII school, one thing that was really nice was to go out on the sea ice and use radiometry instruments that measure the incident sunlight and the reflected sunlight and the amount of light that penetrates the ice, because I'm going to Antarctica again next year, where I'll be using those exact instruments to look at the energy budget of sea ice. So it was a really, really useful primer and head start for some of my future work. And it was great to be able to talk to experts who've used those instruments on many, many campaigns to get some inside tips and tricks on what to do and, perhaps more importantly, what not to do. Another thing that was really nice about the BEPSII Sea Ice School was that we had really ready access to the sea ice. So we would often spend the morning doing lectures and tasks inside the research station. And then in the afternoon, we all just walked out onto the sea ice, very much like you might walk out into a park in a major European city. And it was right there. And we really got to know it over the course of the 10 days or so that we were there. So particularly as at the time of year we were there, melt onset was just happening. The snow was wet, and actually more and more of the ice was emerging from underneath the snow cover. Even in the short time that we were in Cambridge Bay, we got to see quite an interesting transformation in terms of the properties of the snow and the sea ice. And we got to not just observe that, but interpret it and talk to experts about all the different aspects of that transformation. Finally, one really valuable aspect of the BEPSII school, I think, was that we had a very close relationship with the lecturers and the scientists that were there. So it wasn't just information being transmitted from them to us, but we often had quite an interesting dialogue about what was going on, both like globally in terms of change, but also locally in Cambridge Bay, the climate changes that we were seeing, but also the seasonal changes that we were seeing, and very much, particularly with some of the postdocs, there was a real swapping of information rather than just a one-way transmission of knowledge from lecturers to students. So I thought that was really valuable. The legacy of the BEPSII CI school for me is that I met lots and lots of students and lecturers from well outside of my discipline. So next time I have a biogeochemical question, particularly in terms of ecology, I have a bunch of people that I can call up and just ask, or just send a quick email rather than sort of awkwardly introducing myself, as is often the way. As well as BGC experts, I actually bumped into loads of people from my field, and that was really useful to meet other PhD students who are working on things that are often quite similar to what I work on, and just to ensure that we're not duplicating work, but more importantly that we're considering the right questions in the field, and we're working together rather than in parallel silos. I brought home quite a few lessons from the BEPSII school. I, of course, brought home some technical lessons on instrumentation and how things work, how to measure stuff, but also I think I brought home some more profound lessons about how the Arctic environment works, and also had a really interesting insight into how Cambridge Bay works as a town, as a northern Canadian town, what the lifestyle is like there, and what the environmental issues pressing local Indigenous people in the Arctic are. So that was a really useful cultural insight, I think. I also brought home a lot of networking contacts, so people that I can consult and collaborate with in future, ask for technical guidance, scientific collaboration, but also mentorship and guidance in a more holistic sense, in terms of where to go with my career and what's worth focusing on. And finally, I think I brought home some friends as well. That there were quite a few British students there that I'll surely see again in Britain, but also internationally. I'm sure that lots of the friendships made at the BEPSII school will be continued at conferences and workshops in future.